Hi, everybody. Welcome along to our press conference today, and apologies for the slightly late start. In June 2019, an estimated 1.7 million people in Hong Kong, which is a quarter of the population, demonstrated against the anti-extradition law amendment that opened the door for Hong Kong citizens to be extradited to China. That would later become a wider democracy movement, and the result certainly for critics of Beijing is that media freedom in Hong Kong has been crushed, trade unions and free speech has been suppressed, and civil society has been destroyed. Several of the high-profile Hong Kong activists who took part in that, or who afterwards championed the democracy movement, will gather in Japan this month on the protests, the fifth anniversary of the 2019 protests, and that's the first time they've got together in Asia since the demonstrations began. So we are very fortunate and honored to have three of those speakers here today. We have Finn Lau, who is the founder of the Hong Kong Liberty Executive Director, the Points of Media UK. We have Alric Lee, who's the founder and executive director of Lady Liberty Hong Kong. And online from DC, from Washington, DC, we have Anna Kwok, executive director of the Hong Kong Democracy Council. I'm going to get out of the way as always, let our speakers speak, and then we will have a Q&A. Who's going to go first? Anna.
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anna Kwok, Executive Director of the Hong Kong Democracy Council, a US-based Hong Konger-led organization that works on policy advocacy, research, and diaspora empowerment. So a week ago, we marked the 5th year since the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement, a watershed moment in Hong Kong's history that has forever changed the course of our city and our people. And in the past 5 years, Hong Kongers tried protesting against the government in hopes to acquire our rights, to vote for our own leaders, and to have democracy and freedom in Hong Kong. The protest, however, has earned us heavy political crackdown from the government, including the implementation of the so-called national security law in 2020 and the recent swift passage of the Article 23. Both laws offer a draconian framework to criminalize any political reform and political exercising of political rights in Hong Kong. According to the political prisoner database published by our team, as of yesterday, Hong Kong has seen 1,872 political prisoners since the 2019 movement. The numbers, however, will continue to rise as more political trials will continue to hand out harsh sentencing in the following months. Solitary confinement is unfortunately a very common treatment we have seen for the most outspoken political prisoners. And we have also heard physical assault, sexual violence, and even the radicalization program that aims to brainwash Hong Kongers. So all in all, the Hong Kong government has crafted a comprehensive system to lock up people in Hong Kong, not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually. And in recent years, we have also actually seen the law used against foreigners and against Hong Kongers who are not present in Hong Kong. So we're seeing the trend of the Hong Kong government trying to use legal systems extraterritorially to persecute and to hunt for Hong Kongers. So last year, I believe we have all heard about that case of a Hong Konger who was studying in Japan, who got arrested for sharing her thoughts on social media upon landing in Hong Kong. And last July, 8 Hong Kongers, including myself and also our fellow speaker here, Finn, were issued a arrest warrant and a 1 million Hong Kong dollar bounties on our head. And 5 more Hong Kongers received the same bounties in December, and we're actually expecting the list to grow on. And this instance of transnational repression, by punishing Hong Kongers for what they do outside of Hong Kong and even outside of China's territory, is definitely on the rise. Last year, we have published a report documenting the Hong Kong economic and trade offices in the U.S. conducting counter-lobby activities that aim to silence Hong Kongers abroad. And we have also experienced anecdotes of being surveilled by potential HAETO staff, including HAETO officials here in the U.S. asking other Hong Kongers in the U.S. for information about people on our team. So but then the Hong Kong government is not alone. The Chinese government also seeks to employ its United Front people and network to harass and attack pro-democracy protesters. For example, last November, as I was protesting against Xi Jinping in San Francisco, since he was here in the US to visit Biden for the APEC summit, I received death threats, harassment, and I have also seen assaults being done against other Hong Kongers and Tibetans who were trying to protest against Xi Jinping. This is something we have seen more and more often, not only in the United States, but also around the world against pro-democracy Hong Kongers. And that's why, as transnational repression is something that is of a growing trend among Hong Kongers, we are seeking to strategize and to communicate with governments around the world and policymakers around the world to identify possible perpetrators, identify possible networks, and identify ways to protect ourselves against this sort of crimes and this sort of threats. So currently, Hong Kongers around the world are trying to form our diaspora in exile, and we're trying to organize among ourselves to think of strategies and to find ways to one day liberate Hong Kong. So for instance, in the last 2 years, Hong Kong Democracy Council has organized 2 consecutive Hong Kong summits, convening Hong Kongers from around the world and here in Washington, D.C. to think of how our future how we should continue with our future. And I'm really honored today to be joining the Japan-Hong Kong Summit and to be on the same panel with the hosts from the Japan-Hong Kong Summit and the UK-Hong Kong Summit, since we're all trying to make meaningful changes for our Hong Kong diaspora. And last but not least, I just want to share the current most common policy asks we have seen from the Hong Kong community. First of all, the Hong Kong community and the Hong Kong diaspora has been asking governments around the world to urge for the release of political prisoners in Hong Kong. The more than 1,800 political prisoners we have seen in Hong Kong should be released immediately. And secondly, we are also seeking ways to examine the Hong Kong economic and trade offices around the world. I believe there is also an office in Japan where they conduct different cultural activities, but also economic discussions here in Japan. But then what do they actually do? It's something that we're still trying to study and examine and to see if it has any link with the ongoing transnational repression campaign we're seeing around the world. And last but not least, Hong Kongers around the world are also calling for accountability done on the Hong Kong government, including toolkits like sanctions or even a divestment from conducting businesses with China and with the Hong Kong market. So far my remark, and I really look forward to having the conversation going forward and receiving any questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Finn, are you next?
Yep. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Actually, just 10 minutes or 15 minutes ago, I was in the Japanese Parliament talking about the situation of Hong Kong, as well as maybe some kind of spy activities going on in the UK, US, Germany, or even maybe in Japan. So one of the things that I wish to highlight, especially after 2019 Hong Kong movement, is that there are, maybe accelerating number or escalating number of transnational repression, TNR activities. So in the case of UK, recently there is a case of Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office spying case, for which, unfortunately, I'm one of the 3 Hong Kong targets. Because of the court proceedings, I couldn't really comment much at this moment. But perhaps until the case is over, then I could talk about more of the details. But on the other hand, one of the things I want to highlight is that it is highly likely that the Hong Kong government, as well as the Beijing regime, the Chinese Communist Party, is somehow abusing its right, as well as its diplomatic immunity to do some kind of illegal lobbying works, as well as spy activities in different countries. So according to a report published by Safeguard Defenders, there are at least over 100 safeguard police stations in different countries, including Japan, and there is one in Tokyo, just 30 minutes walk from here. So this is something that is going on, and in terms of, well, what we could do to maybe to support Hong Kongers as well as other dissidents, I would say we have to investigate on this kind of secret police stations and to investigate on the HKETO, just echoing with the points raised by Anna on the HKETO. But going back to the situation of Hong Kong, well, there are some significant, I would say, developments. So as Anna has provided some highlights or overview of prisoners, maybe I could somehow emphasize on maybe one or two cases, especially on the Jimmy Lai's case, because I am one of the 5 so-called defendants of that case that has been linked closely to Jimmy Lai, because the Hong Kong authorities and the Beijing regime, they have been fabricating different kind of accusation, fabricating different kind of so-called evidences saying that Jimmy Lai is the black hand that control everything back in 2019, which is not true, because the 2019 Hong Kong movement is a grassroots movement for which millions of people marching on the street to pursue for democracy and freedom. So recently there has been some international politicians, including Japanese politicians, to call on the Justice Secretary of Hong Kong government to let them to testify, but then they never respond. So I think this shows some kind of injustice in terms of procedures. On the other hand, well, there have been some unfair trial procedures being pushed during the court case. For example, Jimmy Lai has been denied with the access to foreign lawyers, British lawyers, and he has been detained for years, even before the trial started. On the other hand, well, to me, I would say that one of the things I want to clarify is that while I never received any kind of, well, maybe direct support from Jimmy Lai, so I would say all those, accusation is inaccurate. One of the things I want to highlight is that there are so many people, like Andy Lee, like different people, trying their best to contribute to the cause of Hong Kong. So I would say one of the things that we need to do right now is to counter the narrative pushed by the Beijing regime. On the other hand, since August 2020, we have the promulgation of the Draconian National Security Law, which has been, well, somehow criticized by the UN Special Rapporteur because it violates many different UN conventions, different kinds of international treaties, including the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration. That's why you may see that there are lots of different G7 countries to talk about the severe breach of the international treaty by the PRC. So at this moment, I think it's critical to think about how to contain China on this kind of breach. So the last point will be that I have co-organized the UK-Hong Kong Symposium for 2 years already. For the last year, we got the last British Governor, Chris Patten, Lord Patten, to be our keynote speakers. And we have more than 120 committee leaders from the UK community to talk about their plans to strategize ourselves in this fight for democracy. And this year, we have the Security Minister, Tom Tugan MP, to deliver a keynote speech. But what I want to say is that during that conference, we have encountered a suspected spy. So he claimed to be working for someone with a Chinese name without any referral and tried to get into our venue. When we asked for what he is working for, he just said he's a freelancer. So we tried to kick him out, and outside the venue, he immediately called someone. And one day before our UK-Hong Kong Symposium, the Chinese embassy criticized the Foreign Office of the UK government for sending Secretary Minister to our conference. So this shows how assertive and aggressive the PRC is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we welcome that kind of criticism. That's grist to our mill. The last speaker is Alric.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And also thank you, my colleagues, Anna and Finn, for talking about the current political situation in Hong Kong and the phenomenon of transnational repression that's being carried out by the CCP overseas, particularly in that of United Kingdom and the United States, where the concentration of the Hong Kong diaspora population is. I am based here in Tokyo. Our group, Lady Liberty Hong Kong, is also based here in Tokyo. I've been in this country since 2015, and I thought that I've known this country. But then the relation of Hong Kong to Japan came as a shock to me when I heard of an interview of a Japanese dance band who visited Hong Kong. When one of the Hong Kong journalists asked that Japanese band what their impression of Hong Kong is, what do they come first to mind when they think about Hong Kong? And that Japanese girl band answered Jackie Chan. So that was very shock to me because I thought Jackie Chan is a figure of the 1990s, and with so much happening that was on the streets of Hong Kong in 2019, I thought there would be a public awareness of what has happened in Hong Kong, at least for ordinary Japanese people. But then Jackie Chan, the answer of Jackie Chan really shocked me. And that makes me wonder if what has been sacralized on the streets of Hong Kong really had meaning. We only have this Jackie Chan figure appearing on televisions and cinemas in 1990s, and then that figure just kind of stayed in the mind of Japanese people for a long time. From my perspective, there are I think what's happening in Hong Kong should be taught and known in Japan, because us Hong Kong people has trusted the Chinese government to uphold the promise to keep a Hong Kong free city for 50 more years after 1997. And because we're civilized people, we are people who know manners. Just like Japanese people, we thought people would treat us with goodwill and peace. But then after 2014, we gradually realized that this is a lie. What we had devoted to China, our goodwill to China has been abused by the Chinese Communist Party. And this is what we want to tell the Japanese people. Making peace with the Chinese Communist Party wouldn't trade peace with you. They would just make use of your goodwill and infiltrate your society bit by bit with the time you give them. First and foremost, we would like to call on the Japanese government to express deep concern about the ongoing political persecution in Hong Kong. People, including the NSL 47, are being on trial at this moment, and they're facing a long sentence before they even give out the sentence. They have been in jail for more than 1,000 days for now, before even the first trial begins. So it is essential that the Japanese government publicly condemn the unjust sentences handed out to political prisoners. By taking a firm stance, Japan can signal to the international community that it stands with those who fight for democratic values and human rights. A clear condemnation from Japan will amplify our voice who have been silenced and demonstrate that the global community does not tolerate such oppressive actions. Second, we also urge the Japanese government to implement Magnitsky-style sanctions against Chinese or Hong Kong officials who abuse human rights. Such measures can put significant pressures on those who perpetrate this injustice and demonstrate a commitment to uphold international human rights standard. Additionally, we also ask Japan to establish an asylum or visa program for people who have been persecuted in Hong Kong. We should provide them with a safe haven who fled persecution and they want a new life, not just in Japan, but in Asia and other parts of the world. It will send a powerful message to the Chinese Communist Party that we support human rights and democracy. And this program can serve as a beacon of hope for those who have been forced to leave their home in search of safety and freedom. Third, diplomatic channels must be utilized to exert pressure on China, demanding the cessation of human rights violation and release of political prisoners. Japan's influential position in the international community can play a crucial role in rallying other nations to join the cause, particularly that of the Southeastern Asian countries. This kind of coordinated diplomatic efforts, we can create a united front that holds China accountable for its actions and push for meaningful change. Last but not least, we call on Japanese-based business and global enterprise to reconsider their relation with Hong Kong under the current regime. Continuing business as usual undermines the efforts for our fights for freedom and democracy, and it indirectly supports the oppressive measures imposed by the Chinese government. Economic pressure can be a powerful tool in advocating for human rights and democratic values. Business should have a moral responsibility to ensure that their operation do not contribute to the suppression of freedom and must take a stand against such injustice. Furthermore, to the people of Japan, we ask you to be concerned about Hong Kong. Although Hong Kongers are no longer be able to voice their opinions freely in Hong Kong, many of us are still fighting in the tiniest way possible whenever we can. Maintaining our visibility on the international stage is difficult due to other ongoing global issues and the national security law. This is why we need your help to keep our stories alive. Please tell your family members, friends, and colleagues about Hong Kong. Share with them about the bravery of Chow Han Tong, the selflessness of Jimmy Lai, and the sacrifice of Marco Leung. These are heroes who deserve the same amount of attention and recognition, just as any Nobel Prize winner. By sharing their stories, you can help to keep the spirit of resistance alive and honor the sacrifice made by those who fought for freedom. Additionally, to the Japanese people, we urge you to write and speak to your elected officials at all levels of government, ward offices, prefectural offices, and national governments. Tell them that you care about the people of Hong Kong and would like to see administrative policies that benefit the people of Hong Kong diaspora community, such as cultural exchange programs and community integration programs. It is crucial the Japanese government understand that the request for aiding Hong Kong community comes not from the Hong Kong people, but also from the Japanese people. Moreover, you can also write to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ask them to issue a statement of condemning the ongoing human rights violation in Hong Kong, and to apply diplomatic pressure on the Hong Kong government. Your voices can make a difference in shaping foreign policies and advocating for human rights. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to spell it out, Alric, you're saying that you're not happy with the level of support that you're currently getting from Japan. Would that be fair to say?
No, we are happy with the current level of support, but then we think it can be further enhanced.
You want it to be stronger. You want the condemnation to be stronger and so on.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you for those three statements. We will now open it up to questions. If you would like to ask a question, just raise your hand, indicate that you'd like to speak. I see the lady in the front here first. If you would be kind enough to identify yourself when you come to the mic. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for sharing the stories about Hong Kong. My name is Mina Ashikawa from Nikkei. I would like to ask about your current life environment. And so I think you were involved to the pro-democracy movement, so you are hard to go back to Hong Kong right now. And first of all, I would like to ask what kind of place you are living right now, and do you feel comfortable or are you accustomed to living where you are now? And do you miss your hometown Hong Kong, and do you ever wish to return? Also, where is your families are living, and do you get to see your family, or is it difficult to see them? These are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to go first? Anna, you're living in D.C., right? Washington, D.C. Would you like to go first?
For sure. So thank you so much for the question. I'm currently living in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And of course, not being able to go home is always a pain. It's always a pain that you can never overcome. And it's something that comes back to haunt you from time to time, the realization that you can never go home unless one day maybe you can liberate Hong Kong. As of now, my parents, my family, it's all in Hong Kong. And actually last August, they were detained for questioning because of my bounty and because of my involvement in the Hong Kong movement. And of course, right now, you can imagine that I cannot meet them. And it is also not something that I would do to put them through dangers again. And that, of course, is very difficult for any exiles. And actually, I would say many Hong Kongers as well, because ultimately, it's not only the 13 of us who have received bounties or people who have received arrest warrants that are under this pressure and under this pain, but also thousands of Hong Kongers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers who have to flee and who had to leave our beloved home because of the state of Hong Kong is in right now. So I think that is why that here today, the three of us gathers here and the hundreds of Hong Kongers gathers in Japan as well in hopes for finding the right way back to Hong Kong, even though we know it's hard, even though we know it may take decades or even, more than a century, right? But still, we share the hope of seeing a free Hong Kong one day, not only for ourselves, but also for our future generation. So that is why we're still trying to fight. And that is why, even though living outside sometimes can be difficult, we're still persisting and we're still trying our very best to keep fighting for our homeland, even though we're outside.
Thanks, Anna. Finn, you live in the UK.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for this question. Well, I would say, same as Anna, I am so desperately, to go back to Hong Kong. So when I landed on the Haneda airport 3 days ago, this is my first time to visit Tokyo. And I would say this is also the closest distance between myself with Hong Kong after I got my so-called 1 million bounty Hong Kong dollar from the Hong Kong government. So that's why I miss Hong Kong so much. But then for the last 5 to 6 years, I've been spending my life in the UK. I would say I somehow adapt to the life of UK. Right now, I work in the construction industry as a professional, which was actually my job even before 2019. But then I would say right now we got more dimensions. I would try to use my daytime maybe from 9 to 5 to work in that industry, and then for the rest of my time to dedicate myself, my time, my effort to Hong Kong, to democracy, etc. So that's how I try to strike a balance between earning a living and fighting for something that we desperately want. On the other hand, one of the things that I may want to highlight is that, technically we could go back to Hong Kong, but we could never get out. Yeah, so we will spend our time, the rest of our life in the jail. So I would say to us, perhaps it's our duty and responsibility to continue advocate for the Hong Kong causes, to talk about what the Hong Kong people could not talk in Hong Kong. And as a very recent remark, I've been training myself for my first marathon. Hopefully I could return to Tokyo for Tokyo Marathon in the future.
You're a marathon runner. And just to be clear, people may not be aware, there's a £100,000, roughly £100,000 bounty on all of your heads. Is that right?
Well, it's around 20 million Japanese yen.
20 million. Yeah. Okay, and it's on everybody, all three of you?
Not me.
Not you, okay.
Yes.
Alric, not yet. Would you like to make a statement? Would you like to answer the question? Or?
I think my suffering is comparatively insignificant to the other two speakers here. I've been here in Japan since 2015, and I've been a citizen in Japan since 2020. So I've been very grateful for the provision of such a safe environment to me in Japan. People here are very polite, clean, and disciplined. And from a Hong Konger's perspective, living in Japan, we feel that we have a responsibility to continue voice over the Hong Kong people, given such a safe and civil environment Japan has provided for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, scanning the room again. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand, the gentleman in front. And then I'll take a question from online.
Thank you very much. My name is Takuya Nishimura, freelance journalist. As hearing your comments, I had an impression that we cannot endorse the current Hong Kong government right now. So, do you have any specific idea to restore the freedom in Hong Kong? Idea or plan? And will it take a long time? And let me ask the second question. There is an argument that the Hong Kong today is Taiwan tomorrow. And what would you say to the people in Taiwan who protest against People's Republic of China? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to go first?
Maybe I could. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Finn can go first.
Okay, sorry. Well, in terms of the plan to somehow liberate Hong Kong, this is a very, very good question. But on the other hand, it's very complicated. One of the things that we have discussed for the last few days during the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Summit is how to strategize ourselves. So there are lots of different ideas. But I think one of the common things, or maybe some kind of consensus, is that we need to prepare for some critical moment. We need to do better than 2019 if the critical moment came. For example, what if there is an uprising maybe in 2 years, 3 years, you never know. So in that case, then we need to better prepare ourselves. So there are lots of different reflection after 2019. Someone said maybe Hong Kong has lost, but I don't think so. I think we got tactical wins. We got tactical wins in terms of international advocacy. We got deeper collaboration, more connection with different local politics. I couldn't imagine myself maybe 5 to 6 years ago that today I was sitting here, we'll be sitting here, at the Japanese parliament to talk about Hong Kong. So I always say everything is possible. So that's why that is the long-term plan. We need to prepare ourselves. We need to organize ourselves. Yeah, so that is the very generic thing. Maybe Anna could contribute more when she talk about that. Yeah. On the other hand, well, as to your second question, yeah, I do agree that Hong Kong today could be Taiwan tomorrow. So recently we have been seeing different kind of tensions or conflicts inside the Taiwanese parliament. And I do hope that Taiwanese people, they will treasure their democracy and to think about the possibility of being infiltrated or being united fronted. I would say for the last 50 years, maybe since 1960s, the Beijing regime has been trying so hard to infiltrate into Hong Kong. They have been trying to change the narrative, different kinds of things, and they even deprive ourselves the right to have a referendum before the 1997 Hong Kong handover. So this is something that, and then we mistrust the CCP. We thought if we help the CCP, if we collaborate with CCP, we will have the one country, two system for 50 years. But in the end, after 25 years, or actually less than 25 years, we lost everything protected under the joint declaration.
Thank you. Anna, do you want to try and answer the question?
Sure, thank you. So I really appreciate the questions. For the first question about the future of Hong Kong, of course, it is going to be a long and hard fight. And as Finn said, Hong Kongers right now are trying to equip ourselves, to prepare ourselves for when the moment comes. How do we seize it? And on the other hand, I do think it's time to rekindle a sort of discussion about Hong Kong's lost right of self-determination. Now, Hong Kong's situation of how we came here today is actually a mix of many failures from the international community, including the United Nations as an international mechanism to negotiate and to compromise how peoples could be understood and how their rights should be understood. And actually, there was a time and point where Hong Kong was listed as one of the peoples that would be allowed the right to self-determination. But that was actually taken out by China and its allies in the United Nations. So I think one very important thing that Hong Kongers are looking into right now is how to reintroduce and how to instill our rights to self-determination that was supposedly ours. And also, the other hand, we see that Hong Kong is in the state of affairs today is because of how international treaties are not being respected. And I'm talking about the Sino-British Joint Declaration that was signed by the PRC and the United Kingdom. And seeing how China has blatantly breached the agreement without really having to pay any consequences does question the world. What should we do with the PRC as a global player and as almost a superpower these days. So I think for Hong Kongers to look at our future, we must think of ourselves as global citizens. We must think of ourselves as international players who are actually not just grappling inside of Hong Kong, but internationally and globally with other countries, other governments, and other peoples as well. How do we build that and construct that democratic future that can be shared and secured by every country and every peoples around the world? So that ties to actually the second question about Hong Kong today, Taiwan tomorrow. While that may not be the most accurate or the most welcome statement by some people, right now we do see, Taiwan facing threats to their democracy. At this very moment, there is a protest happening right outside of the Legislative Council in Taiwan. Actually, one of my team members is protesting there right now because we fear that the loss of Taiwan's democracy may actually mean more dangers and more threats in Asia and in Asia Pacific. And that is why I think our fates and our future is tied together somehow, and they're connected. And that's why we must not only defend our own freedoms and own democracy, but also the general democracy and freedoms of people in Asia.
Thanks, Anna. Let me just ask a question from online. We have several. This is from Anthony Trotter of ABC News. Has Hong Kong, once a beacon of autonomy, been rolled back to colonial status under China's command? Who wants to go first?
I can quickly jump in, and I guess Finn and Alric would have something to chime in as well. I would say yes. I would say that Hong Kong is now being colonized by the PRC. Because right now we're seeing Hong Kongers' identity being erased and being repressed. Hong Kongers in Hong Kong are not encouraged to think of themselves as Hong Kongers. Instead, they're forced to think of themselves as the Chinese people, even though Hong Kongers have secured a sense of identity among themselves. And we're also seeing our language, including Cantonese, being erased and being, increasingly not taught at schools in Hong Kong. And with our culture being displaced that way, we can argue that Hong Kong is being colonized by the Chinese government. And most importantly, from decades ago, what Hong Kongers ask for is simply that Hong Kongers govern Hong Kongers. Hong Kongers make the decision for ourselves, and we have never had that right. We did not have that right in the 80s and the 90s when Hong Kong's future was discussed. And that is why today we still strive for that seat at the table. We strive for leading our own discussion of what the future holds for Hong Kong. And that is why we're still fighting right now.
Thank you. Finn or Alric, do you want to add anything?
The question about whether Hong Kong has slipped back to colonial era, I think it's both yes and no. Colonial era Hong Kong has always been about not being encouraged to have Hong Kong identity. So, which is the same situation right now. Hong Kong people are discouraged, or even sometimes forbidden to have a Hong Kong identity. That we speak Cantonese, and then we use the Hong Kong money and have a Hong Kong passport. But then our life is gradually being suppressed by the Chinese Communist Party. But then in the colonial era of the British rule, Hong Kong people have always had the option to remain silent. We don't have to voice out to support the British government. But then right now, kindergarten students, very young children, they have to raise the Chinese flag in their daily school lives, which is a brainwashing kind of act. And we no longer have the option to remain silent. We have to actively voice our patriotic messages, supporting the Hong Kong government, supporting Chinese government, or else it would be considered illegal in some way. So the Hong Kong people are living in fear every day, which is not present when the days of the British colonial rule. That's the point I want to make. I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
Yeah. Well, just a last remark is that previously, back in May, I attended a symposium on Hong Kong arts and culture in The Hague, the Netherlands. One of the things that we discuss is about cultural genocide. So right now, we got cultural genocide in Tibet as well as East Turkestan. I think Hong Kong is going on the same trajectory. Everything is everything related to Hong Kong culture, Hong Kong language, Hong Kong history are being eradicated bit by bit. So there are so many different people trying to preserve these things. And this is the least thing that Hong Kongers are trying to do with a very limited freedom. But, under the recently enacted so-called Article 23 legislation, they even called, the Beijing regime even called the term soft resistance. So in the future, it's maybe even impossible to talk about Hong Kong culture, Hong Kong identity anymore. And on the other hand, one of the things that I want to highlight is that, when compared to maybe pre-1997, I never heard about an incident saying that, if you don't sing the national anthem of England, of the UK, then you will got arrested. But that happens in Hong Kong recently. So when there was the PRC national anthem being played during a football match, so somebody actually filmed the audience. And then because some Hong Kongers didn't stand up or sing the national anthem of the PRC, the song of the Chinese Communist Party, they were taken away. So I would say this is even worse than the colonial era.
Thank you. Scan in the, would you like a question? Gentleman in the front? Dozo. Yeah.
My name is Kosuke Takahashi. I'm a Tokyo correspondent of the Diplomat US magazine. My question is, do you think Japan has a proper system to accept Hong Kong activists in exile or Hong Kongers who is suffering from the human rights issues or etc.? I heard Agnes Cho-san, Shuten-san, she likes Japanese pop culture, Japanese animation. She picked up Canada to immigrate because Japan doesn't have a adequate, proper system to accept the refugees' asylums. What do you think of the Japan's acceptance system comparing the US, UK, Canada? Because we Japanese don't know the other world's system to accept refugees. So could you tell us briefly? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me answer that question. The UK program has been one of the most supportive programs in the world to welcome prosecuted Hong Kongers to go settle in the UK. And that has been because of the moral obligation of the UK government to accept Hong Kongers. And United States, being an ally of the United Kingdom, naturally would follow suit of the United Kingdom to welcome more Hong Kongers to settle in the United States. But then the language used by Hong Kongers have been mainly Cantonese and English. So for people to settle in the UK and US have been relatively easier. But then if they come to Japan, where the educational system and the language use is completely from that of Hong Kong, I think the framework would provide a hurdle for Hong Kong people to come settle here. That's why I understand the relative difficulty for Japanese governments to impose an easier framework or easier program to welcome Hong Kongers to settle here in Japan due to the language and cultural difference. Having said that, I've seen cases where people having been arrested in Hong Kong were given asylum and entry here in Japan, even though they had to remain a low profile. So here I want to thank the people and the civic society of Japan for being so actively supporting Hong Kong activists, even with a very low-key tone. And in the future, I do hope that Japan can develop a resettlement program which help Hong Kongers not just to be here in Japan, but also to be integrated with the local community easier. And I think there would benefits both for the Hong Kong people and the Japanese government. As you see, the Hong Kong business environment is not exactly friendly for business people who continue to operate in Hong Kong. They would face the charge of spying activities by just reading or sharing foreign news. That's why I think Japan can benefit from the exodus of Hong Kong commercial professionals to come settle in Japan. I think that will help for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to add, Anna or Finn? No?
I can quickly jump in about the US program right now. So right now in the US, we are still fighting for longer term pathways for Hong Kongers to come here. But at the moment, the Biden administration did introduce this program called the Deferred Enforced Departure, allowing Hong Kongers who are already in the US to continue staying for 18 months or 24 months at a time. So that is currently the scheme used and introduced by the US government, and that is without any pathway to a more long-term or permanent citizenship. Versus in the UK, there is a pathway to longer-term citizenship.
Thank you. So it sounds like the main barriers, if I'm understanding you correctly, in Japan are cultural, not diplomatic, not political. Would that be right? Like people are not being refused asylum. They're just not coming here because of cultural reasons.
Yes, that's my understanding.
That's your understanding. Okay, thank you. Let me just take a question from online. This is from Mar Sanchez Cascado from EFE News Agency. Do you feel it was worth risking everything to defend your democratic principles, even though it has resulted in exile? What gives you the strength to continue the struggle from abroad?
Yeah, maybe I try to answer a little bit. Thanks for this question. Well, this is a very, I would say, heavy question because to me, I would say one of the things that push many of us to keep fighting is survivor's guilt. There are so many different Hong Kongers being put in jail we got, as Anna has mentioned, we got more than 1,800 political prisoners sitting in the jail of Hong Kong. The total length of their imprisonment is more than 800 years. This is even higher than that of Iran. But on the other hand, well, I would say it's our duty, it's our duty to carry on to talk about Hong Kong. Otherwise, the story of Hong Kong would be forgotten. So right now, right now in 2024, you could see that maybe the number of reporting on Hong Kong news has been dropped. Well, because there is no freedom, no civil liberties for marching, for protests in Hong Kong anymore. So you hardly could get any feasible scenes to be filmed. But there are lots of things going on in Hong Kong right now, and even overseas. So yeah, so that's why we are trying our best.
Thank you. Anna, do you have anything to add?
Sure. It's a question that I think a lot of us ask ourselves every day. But in the end, even though we're always looking for some more sophisticated answers, the answer is very simple. For me, it's love. It's the love for my home. It's the love for the people inside. It's the love for all the memories I've had in Hong Kong. And it's love for a place that our next generations can grow up in without fears. And I think it's simple as that. And that reminds me, actually, in the 2019 movement, during the protest, there was a huge banner carried by dozens of people. And that banner said, "We really love Hong Kong." And I think that really summarizes the spirit of every Hong Konger who chose to march on the street, who chose to protest in the front line, who chose to do all these, even though they know consequences are awaiting us. And even though, of course, back then we did not know everything would be as bad as it is today, but still, people risked being arrested, being persecuted, being taken away, and even some people risked, being disappeared to do all this because we love home. And also one thing I want to mention is that sometimes I feel when people think about, us going into exile, being activists that are under death threats, that are under harassment, people may think, oh, that's such a sad life, or that is such a stressful life. But I do want to say that we still every day have the freedom to pick, right? And to me, I think it's a choice I consciously make every single day to continue doing what I do. Every one of us can just say, okay, we will stop doing that and go away. But still, we decide that we have the freedom to continue to do what we do because that is what we love doing. So I think ultimately it's worth it. If I can choose again, I would still choose what I have done because I do think, this is for the love that I cannot really describe, but it is very concrete and it is very powerful.
Thank you. Just scanning the room. If you would like to ask a question in the room, can you just indicate, raise your arm or your hand and let me know? Lady in the back. Yeah. We have several more questions online. But.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Shiami Kadoya from Japan News and Yomiuri Shimbun. I want to ask if you could elaborate a little more about the political prisoners, especially the non-famous ordinary protesters, what's happening to them right now, and what the exile community are trying to do. I bet it will be difficult with the security laws, but what are the strategies?
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I could provide some remarks on this note. Well, so I would say it's different case by case. So recently I have attended a panel discussion with another Hong Kong in exile, Tony Chung, who recently got released from the Hong Kong prison as well as escaped to Hong Kong before the enactment of the Article 23 legislation. So what he talks about was the situation in the cell. There are lots of procedural injustice there. The officer in the prison, they will simply abuse their right to torture people, to lock them up in a single cell without any entertainment for days, for weeks, simply because they sometimes maybe they may cause attention from the outside world. They could simply make up any kind of excuses. So this applies to all political prisoners. On the other hand, there are lots of, you could say, nameless prisoners sitting in the jail now. well, again, as highlighted by Tony Chung, they are facing this kind of things. And, well, it's quite heartbroken to see that we got more than 1,800 people sitting in the jail. And I would say if we could somehow push the Hong Kong government to follow their procedures, at least to reduce the number of people who got, well, imprisoned before trial, then I would say that would be a great improvement. And how could we improve that? We need to put on the international pressure. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything to add? The other two speakers?
Sure. So about the political prisoners in Hong Kong, of course, there are many named ones that we do receive regular updates from internationally. But of course, there are many frontline protesters who were nameless, who were anonymous, and sometimes they do not receive any support even from their own family in Hong Kong because their family may not share necessarily the same political views with them. And so it's really heartbreaking, as Finn has mentioned, to hear that for these people, sometimes they actually go through even worse treatment because the police officers and the detention officers inside are aware that these people do not get any news spotlight, for example. So actually punishing them, physically assaulting them, or even raping them do not bring any consequences or backlashes for the Hong Kong government. And that's why it's really worth, as Finn said, advocating for the Hong Kong government to follow these procedures more rigorously. As for what people are trying to do to support, right now in the exile community, there are organizations, for example, the Bonham Tree Aid, seeking to support political prisoners inside of Hong Kong, as well as their families who are supporting these political prisoners. So there are ways to donate to them, and then they can securely transfer that funds to people in need in Hong Kong. And there are also some smaller organizations or networks in Hong Kong who are trying to gather, for example, secondhand books or materials, resources that people inside jail may need. And that is how people in Hong Kong still try to support political prisoners without expressing their political opinions or political views.
Thank you. This is a question. Dozo. Sorry.
Just one quick point to add. I just want to call attention to the increasing trend that the Hong Kong correctional facility are becoming similar to that of the Chinese prisons, where prisoners are not just held there physically, they're not just confined there physically. They want to correct the political view and political beliefs of those prisoners during their time there. So we have been seeing Hong Kong political prisoners having been put through correction programs on changing their way of viewing on the society. They have been forced to be confessing in front of television programs to tell that they regret what they have done in the past, and they will be a proper Chinese citizens from this point on. So I think it's a worse atrocity than just putting people physically in jail. I think putting people's minds in jail is a humanitarian disaster.
Thank you. We have another question this is an online question from Peggy Ye of Nikkei Asia. What is the implication for the verdict of the 47 Democrats cases? So this is what we call the NSL 47, the 47 national security law detainees or people who've been detained who are on trial at the moment. Will international societies have more reaction to what's going on? Do you expect that?
I can start first. For the implication of the trial and conviction, the Hong Kong government is essentially jailing and putting behind bars generations of Hong Kong activists, advocates, policymakers, and professionals. And we are talking about generations of Hong Kongers who did not necessarily share the same view for what democracy should entail back in the 2019 Hong Kong movement. But even that diverse range of views right now in the Hong Kong government's eyes, belong to the same category, which is illegal and unlawful. And that is the implication that the Hong Kong government will continue to push that line, that whoever has any sort of disagreement with the Hong Kong government will be considered illegal and subversive to the state. As for the international community responses, we're expecting, of course, we are hoping that the international community will recognize 2024, this year, is the year of possibly the last window of momentum we can gather in the years to come. Because this year we have the trials of the NSL 47, we have the trial of Jimmy Lai, and these are the relatively higher profile cases that will gather more international attention. So if no actions are taken this year in 2024, we are not optimistic enough to see more actions taken in the years to come. And that's why I really urge governments around the world to take the chance to show Hong Kongers that you continue to stand with us and you continue to support human rights and democracy in Hong Kong. And with that said, I do expect the US, whether it's the government or the Congress, to have some sort of responses following the sentencing of the NSL 47 and Jimmy Lai. And I hope that the response will be in accordance and proportionate to what the Hong Kong government is doing to repress political rights in Hong Kong.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Yeah. So I would say there are two implications in addition to what Anna has mentioned. So first of all is that the judicial system of Hong Kong has been weaponized. So they are right now being used as a tool to persecute all people who are dissidents to the Beijing regime, as well as to different kind of oppression or draconian legislation in Hong Kong. The second point is that, well, the rule of law is being undermined. One of the clear evidence is that there are three foreign judges, two from the UK, one from Canada, resigned because of the NSL verdict, as well as other ongoing court proceedings. So, for example, for the Lord Sumption, who is a very prestigious judges in the UK and in the world of judiciary. So he highlighted that he was so disappointed by the verdict of the NSL, as well as how they handled the case. So you can see that, well, that's why I would say the rule of law is being undermined severely.
Thank you. Alric, do you have anything to add?
I would like to add to Finn's point where he has mentioned 3 foreign judges have resigned from the High Court. So the 4% of foreign judges have been a disguise that Hong Kong government has used to retain the image of Hong Kong having an independent judicial system. But then as more and more of these foreign juries are expected to leave from the Hong Kong courts, I call for the international community to delegitimize the Hong Kong judicial system. The independent court system has been getting eroded day by day, and the sentences of these political cases will not only stay in political cases. Even later, in terms of civic cases, I think we will see more and more of these Chinese influence being perpetrated inside the Hong Kong courts.
Thank you very much. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately. It's a very bleak picture that you've painted, but on the other hand, we are encouraged by people like yourselves, young, articulate, and brave, who try to fight the injustices that you've mentioned. Just to mention in passing that we do invite the local Chinese diplomatic representatives to come to the FCCJ, but for some unaccountable reason, they generally decline to talk. But we do, I'm sure they're listening, so we do extend that invitation to them if they want to come and take a grilling at the FCCJ. Thank you very much to Finn, Alric, and Anna for coming today, and we wish you the best, and we hope you'll come back maybe and give us a progress report in a year's time. Thank you so much. Do show your appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Yeah, we always invite